For today's speaker, we have Ankke Orryn. She's also a member, a board member on Celebrate Life's board. Sorry. She's also a member on the board. And let me introduce a little bit about her before we get started. Ankke is an integrative nutritional therapist, medical intuitive, spiritual medium, and empathic energy healer. She is a natural health advocate based on whole foods nutrition, nourishment psychology, and detoxification, a family systems constellations facilitator, and a teacher of embodied contemplative movement practices, yoga, and meditation. She's quite the Renaissance woman. If you'd please welcome our very own Ankke. Good morning, Ankke.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you, Ellen, for that awesome meditation. It's like always good to get back in, get reconnected. It's like I always do my best to connect beforehand, but there's something about the power of all of us doing it together, in this space. And it's just like blast off. So blast off while staying in the body here on the earth, because as Ashley said earlier, that's what it's about too. We have like this time of being here in our bodies on the earth, and we've got to really like own that. So what I wanted to talk about today, or what I'm feeling inspired to talk about, is kind of this journey of spiritualism and how it's helped heal my relationship with my mother. And kind of everybody in my life and my reality, really. But I kind of wanted to talk about this little journey with my mom and our connection, and how spirit has really guided a lot of that throughout the years. And so part of it kind of starts with, so I guess I've been involved with Celebrate Life since I think like 2015 now, which is like, whoa, time goes by fast, right? And, I'd been interested in, psychic phenomena and development for quite a while before that. I think I took my first psychic development classes when I was like 18 or 19 years old, and then kind of played around with it, throughout the years. But actually getting into like mediumship, channeling, all of that stuff came quite a bit later, maybe like 2012, when I really started to kind of explore that and open it up. And then I moved to San Francisco in 2014. And then I was kind of like, okay, where can I go to explore this stuff once I kind of got settled? And Spirit brought me to Celebrate Life. And after exploring a lot of different places, that was the place that I came to, and I was just like, oh, this feels like home. These are my people. This feel like I can really feel spirit here, and I can really feel like this is where I need to be, at least at this time in my life. And so I was so grateful for that, because I really felt this drive, like spirit was like, you got to find your place, especially once I moved to San Francisco and kind of landed there, which I'm no longer living there. I'm in the South Bay most of the time now, but I've also been traveling a lot and doing a lot of exploring in my life. And so, I was really grateful for that time and the development that I had in my mediumship through Celebrate Life and through other connections that I made there. So rewind a bit to talking about my mom and I. So I grew up in a really small town in Canada until I was 12, Midwestern Canada. It was a nuclear research facility. It was a nuclear research, I don't know what you would, facility. And so there were about 2,000 people who lived there from all over the world. They were all like PhD level scientists for the most part. So we had, I think, like the highest per capita number of PhDs in the world for like this tiny little town. And they were doing research with these nuclear reactors. It was like a really quirky place. but, very, very cerebral, like very scientific. My dad was a doctor. My mom had studied child psychology, and, so very, very like highly educated people, but not a lot of spirituality. We didn't even have an actual real church in my town. There were some people that held, they had churches, like they held church, but it was in the school gymnasium. So I think eventually some people got money together later and they built a couple churches in the town, but not while I was living there in the 1980s and early 90s. So that was just, my parents had grown up kind of religious, but neither of them was super connected to it. But my mom was always, they were both kind of open-minded. My dad was a little bit more like back and forth, kind of like, well, maybe I believe, maybe I don't believe. Just a lot of funny stuff around the spirituality piece of things. And my mom was raised Catholic. My dad was raised Lutheran. There was a big argument about how they were going to baptize me. And my dad won the argument because he wanted to make his mother happy. So I was going to be baptized Lutheran. And then, the day that this is just like a window into my dad, and some of you have heard messages from my dad probably at times. He was a very like multifaceted, quirky person. The day of my baptism, he just decided he wasn't going to show up. He was like, no, I don't believe in any of this stuff. Like my inner atheist is coming through, and he just didn't show up. And everybody was mad. My mom hid it from most people, but my uncle and my aunt came to be my godparents, and they drove like 10 hours, and it was just a whole thing. So I grew up with a lot of like ambivalence, I guess, around spirituality and religion. And for my own part, I was not super connected to it. Like the whole Christianity thing never really made sense to me. Apparently I asked my parents if we could go to church when I was really little, just because I wanted to know what it was all about. And we would go, and I would always get lost and not know what Sunday school class I was supposed to be in, because it was like we didn't go often enough that it was clear where I should go, because they didn't have any ranking for me. And when I asked them when I was like 6 years old, I was like, can we just not do that anymore? They were like, yeah, that's fine, we'd rather sleep in. So my dad had a dad joke, like, I'd rather worship at the Church of St. Mattress. So so that was kind of my growing up. But my mom was a little more kind of questioning, open-minded, and she was like, I think I kind of maybe believe in reincarnation or something. She would say stuff like that. And so I never really knew like where she stood with all of that. And so kind of fast forward, my dad passed away when I was 17. I've talked about that at other times. And that was like a very big boom, really traumatic situation for everybody. And, in some ways, drove a bit of a wedge in my mom and I's relationship. Like in some ways made us closer, in some ways made us a little bit more distant. So, and there's, that's a whole other big story in and of itself. But, and I didn't know about spiritualism yet. I knew about psychic stuff. And my aunt used to claim that her mom, my dad's mother, would come through to her and that she would talk to her. And we were always kind of like, I don't know. Even though I like had a sense of things and I was always curious about things. I had intuitions, but I think I just thought it was my imagination. That was what my parents kind of conditioned me to believe. And so my mom and I went through a lot of years of kind of like, and then she got remarried, and I thought it was too soon. And so there was just, a lot of tension in that relationship. And then I got really interested in spirituality and energy work. And, because I knew after what happened to my dad, I needed to heal. Like that, just the universe just showed me that. Spirit was like, this is what you need to do, so I really threw myself into healing and re-embodiment, because I kind of got this hit that, I'd really left my body when all that trauma happened. So, studied dance, studied yoga, studied nutrition. I really like went deeply into all of that and how to heal. And then, took my own experiences and, have kind of like made my career out of that and continue to grow in that. And helping other people with all of that stuff. But my mom never got it. It was like, that was so hard. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, parents or family members or whoever just like not getting you, right? Like, I think a lot of people who are involved in any kind of like more alternative form of spirituality can relate to this, like being the black sheep of your family or whatever, a lot of the time. And so I'm just going to take a breath on that one. Because I can like feel everybody. Um, so, that was challenging. We would butt heads, and we would butt heads about food, and we would butt heads about, just me talking about certain things, it's kind of taboo. And so after I joined Celebrate Life, and I'd been coming and I'd been working on my own mediumship, and, eventually started to get on the platform too. Like, I got really clear guidance from Spirit when they were like, you're ready, start doing it. And then it still took a while for it to happen, but it was like, I could literally feel Spirit being like, like, get out there, and, I invited her. I know this isn't a Mother's Day talk, but this is just what wanted to come up. I invited her to come to Celebrate Life. I forget what year this was, maybe 2016 or 17, for our Mother's Day service, because she was visiting. And my parents they used to live, so this is the other piece. Like, I went to Lilydale and Hydesville recently in May and June with my mom. So this is where it's kind of tying together. But so my mom and my stepdad had moved from Oklahoma, where I lived as a teenager after we moved to the US. And they lived in upstate New York and near Rochester, a suburb of Rochester, New York. They lived there for like 16 years. I knew nothing about spiritualism at that time. I was interested in psychic phenomena, but just didn't know anything about spiritualism. So I had no idea like the proximity of Lilydale and Hydesville to Rochester at that time. And then I think it was like 2015. So it was maybe like right before I got involved with Celebrate Life, they sold their house there. They bought a big, huge RV, fifth wheel trailer with a giant truck, and sold everything except for like a little storage unit full of stuff. Started traveling around the country, like the US and Canada. And, full-time RVers, basically doing that retired people traveling thing. And so it was cool because I would actually see them more often. I would maybe see them, 2-3 times a year sometimes, because I would meet them in Canada in the summer, see some of our relatives there. They would sometimes come out to California, or I'd meet them in Arizona or Utah. It was really kind of this fun, interesting time. So whatever spring that was, they came to California, and they were staying somewhere nearby. And so my mom came to Celebrate Life with me for the Mother's Day service. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I got my mom here. And, she, a little reluctantly though, she was kind of reluctant. It's like something that I felt with her for years was like, how some people it's like a wall, there's just this wall of like, oh, if I open the shades a little bit, all this stuff is going to come flooding through, and it's going to be like a lot. And so there was like a reluctance or like a fear to go there, to go to like opening up some of this stuff. In any case, she comes and she's still a little skeptical. She listened to the messages. She didn't get a message. I feel like she was not quite open to it, and that was okay. But it was a really beautiful service, and we got roses for all the moms. And afterward, a bunch of us went out to brunch. So me and her and a few other friends, mostly who were all mediums or who had been, working on developing their mediumship to some degree. and we're at lunch and we're brunch and we're just talking about all this spiritual stuff and mediumship and our experiences. And she starts to open up. I've never seen this before. She's like, well, I used to see ghosts when I was a kid. And I was just like, because she had never shared this with me before, ever, ever, ever. And so it was like a real revelation for me. It was like once, you could start to kind of peel back the shades, and she was around other people who were making it okay to talk about this, like, oh, like there's places where this is normal. And then she said, yeah, well, you weren't supposed to talk about it back then. We weren't allowed to talk about it. And the funny thing is, like, I know that my grandmother, her mom, who's in spirit now and has come give lots of messages here and there, was very psychic too. Like I could almost feel her. Sorry, doggy. Ginger, it's okay. So I could feel my grandma whenever she was worried. She was a warrior. So I knew she was psychic, and I'd also had revelations at different periods of my life where I could feel how kind of connected my mom and I were in that way. Sometimes in like what almost felt like kind of psychically codependent way where I had to disconnect a little bit. So it was just so validating to hear her say that, but to go, oh, there was all this fear, there were all these layers of fear of our spiritual gift, and on my dad's side of the family too, there's stories about my dad and his gifts and my cousins and, my aunt, like I said before, who got messages from his mother and their mother. So that was really cool. And, kind of fast forward to this year, my parents decided to stop traveling. My mom and my stepdad, my dad passed a long time ago, and they decided to stop traveling because my stepdad's been having health issues. Their dog passed away in the spring. It just, it's kind of like one of those big transitional moments, where you can kind of feel like life is taking a new direction for them. And they decided to move back to the Rochester, New York area because my mom still had all these friends there. She had all these clubs. She'd kept up with them, especially, through COVID and everything, everybody was doing everything online anyway. So she'd stayed in touch with all these friends. She just decided that was like the place that she wanted to be. And my stepdad went along with it, even though he doesn't like winter. So I'm like, oh, I looked up where they found a place in a suburb that's like a little bit less expensive to live, like a little townhouse where they won't have to really worry about too much. And I looked it up, and after being here for a while, I'd heard about Lilydale, I'd heard about Hydesville and the Fox Sisters house, and I heard other people talking about it and joined the online thing that they did. I think it was like not this year, but the previous year. And I looked it up because it's like I know they're in Western New York somewhere. And it turned out their new house was like 20 minutes away from Hydesville. And I was like, what? So how spirit kind of brings things together, because I don't know if I would have made that trip without another reason to go, unless I was going to go to like convention or something. I don't know if I would have done it, but having my parents there was like, oh, and so they asked me if I could come help them move, and I didn't have any other commitments here in California, so I was like, sure, I'll come out, but I want to go. And Lilydale was 2 hours away, so I was like, okay, I will come help you, but I want to go to these places. Like it just felt like spirit was like, here you go. And and I also want to give a thanks out to Carol Caesar, because she really connected me with the people to get in contact with to go tour the Fox Sisters property and who to talk to at Lilydale. So thank you, Carol. And my mom and I went, and we just had such a magical time. We went to these museums in Palmyra first, Palmyra, New York, and there's stuff about the history of the whole area. The whole area at that time was like very spiritually alive, tons of different religions. And it was also where Mormonism sprang up. And, it kind of makes me wonder what was going on astrologically in that area at that time. And so we just had this amazing time, and spoke with Tracy Murphy, who's the caregiver of the Fox Sisters property, and my mom just opened up more and more and more. And then we went to Lilydale for my birthday, because she was like, "What do you want to do for your birthday?" And I was like, "That's what I want to do." And there was a little bit of a like, "Oh, but they're not in full season yet." Like, they weren't, their summer season wasn't open yet, but we still managed to find a place to stay. And I was like, "I don't care. I just want to go anyway." Like, I feel like I need to go. And we went and we stayed at this really cool boarding house that Susan B. Anthony had stayed at once when she went there. And, it's cute old Victorian place. And, just met some really cool people, talked about spiritualism. And I just saw my mom like settling in to this place where that mediumship was normal, was like, oh, again, we can talk about this. And, we met this woman in our boarding house and had this whole beautiful conversation with her. And she had recently lost her mom. And I kind of tuned in, and then, she was trying to figure out what to do. And my mom invited her to join some of her clubs. And it was just this really amazing, and she started to open up. And then she was telling me about how she, and telling us about how she used to see ghosts as a kid. And um, it just, it really felt like it opened things up for us. And, along with all the other spiritual work I've done and the personal development work I've done, it's really shifted our relationship. And it healed something so deep in me to go, oh, like, I'm not weird. I'm not the weird one. Actually, we're all like this. And everyone else was just afraid to admit it, because of various societal factors. And it's been healing for her to just be open about who she really is, and for us to be able to share about those things. And there's still a little hesitation sometimes on her part, but yeah, it was so cool to like go and talk to people, talk to other spiritualists, and talk about kind of why we went in this direction versus the old kind of dogmatic religions. And so yeah, I feel so grateful to spirit, to spiritualism, to this path of healing that I've been on, and that I think a lot of us are on, in terms of being here and being involved in this sort of thing. It's a path of true connection to the divine on your own terms, and remembering who you really are. And I'm just so happy to be doing that with my mother, because I feel, we all have this deep divine bond and, soul connection. What's the word I'm thinking of? Like soul contracts or agreements with the people that are really kind of important players in our lives, right? So it's like, you feel this deeper bond with them, whatever role they might have played in your life, whether it objectively is, good, bad, ugly, however we want to see that. On the deeper level, it's all love. And yeah, so I'm just going to invite you to reflect on, like, where has all of this spiritual opening, introspection, healing, opening up, where has this led to healing for you and your relationships? And where would you like it to go deeper? It's like, I see with her that, I could go even deeper. But I love that at this point in my life, instead of there being sort of like still anger, blame, antagonism, being angry with her about certain things in the past, it's like there's just really like love. There's really love, and there's respect. And I feel like she's gotten to a point where she actually can kind of get and respect who I am and what I do. And it's not like, oh, it's so weird. There's still some of her friends that she maybe won't talk about everything that I do with, because they maybe wouldn't get it, but there's a pride in that, and there's just a beauty in that, and I think we all have our own version of that. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. So I'm gonna wrap that up for now, and we'll take a little break. So let's just take a deep breath together, just real quick. Thank you.
Thank you, Anka. Thanks for that wonderful talk. I'm gonna let Anka get reset for her switch to her medium hat for a second. And I'm going to